Unacademy Plus on the Unacademy YouTube channel, Unacademy CAT-alyst. Welcome to everybody to this session. And in today's session, I'm basically looking at uh, discussing with you a process of how to prepare for group discussion and interview. And we've already had one session on this earlier, where we have talked about this in detail, where we were discussing the process for working on your group discussion skills. So we'll continue with more of that today, and let's, without any further ado, let's start off with our discussion on the process for preparation. So what we had talked about towards the end of the last session was that how do you organize your thinking, and how do you organize your strategy in your group discussion. So we already talked about the stuff, different kind of stuff that we are in part 2 today here, and we already talked about the topics, etc., that you need to think of or you need to prepare on for your group discussion. So what is the speaking strategy in your group discussion in a B school entrance process? So if I talk about this, I mean, the first thing I mentioned to you, this is ideal strategy. The first objective should be that you should try to be one of the first 2-3 speakers. Now, one of the objectives in a group discussion, you should try to be one of the first 2-3 speakers, but it's not just about that. Even if you speak the first, if you are one of the first 2-3 speakers, does not mean that you will be dominating the group, and vice versa. Just because you're one of the first 2-3 speakers, or you're not one of the first 2-3 speakers, does not mean that you'll be out of the group discussion. But if you remember, I'd mentioned this in the last session also, that when you enter a group discussion room, you typically have 8 to 10 seats for the people who are sitting there, and these seats are arranged in such a way that nobody has a positional or a locational advantage or disadvantage. So I mean, like if you go to if you work in an office and you're doing a group discussion in your office, the boss's seat is separate. So he is by default the leader of the discussion, and let's say there are 5 people on each side of the table. So these 10 people are I mean, even here, somebody sitting here might be slightly more disadvantaged than somebody sitting here. But the boss is essentially the leader, it's predefined. But in a group discussion, when you start, at the start of the group discussion, the biggest advantage or the biggest factor that you need to understand is that there is no leader defined. Nobody is the leader. And what happens in a group discussion is that you have to assume leadership of the group. You have to assume leadership of the group. And one of the best ways to do that is to be one of the first 2-3 speakers. And as I said, just being one of the first 2-3 speakers does not really create or guarantee leadership, but you have to add to that, to the fact that you are one of the first 2-3 speakers. You have to add the fact that you make sense when you speak first. Now, and you make sense and you give direction. You take the role of giving direction in the group, not by force, not by default, but by the ideas, by the sheer force of your ideas. So what happens is your target number one. And what happens in a typical group discussion is that as you keep going through, 2 or 3 people at max, sometimes it's one person, but normally it's two people and at max three people. Two or three people will assume the leadership of the group. They will start getting accepted as a leader because of what they have spoken. They'll create their own followers. So when if this is my group discussion setting, maybe if this guy becomes the leader, so what happens is there'll be a few people in the group who will start accepting his leadership. So if he's speaking, this guy starts listening, this guy also starts listening, and this guy also starts listening. There might be others who might not accept his leadership and might want to interrupt him, but then these people will then shut him up if there's somebody trying to come against him. So your initial target has to be to join this leadership group. And as I said, it's not just sufficient to be the first, to be amongst the first couple of speakers. That would not be sufficient to join the leadership group. लीडरशिप ग्रुप ज्वाइन करने के लिए तुमको दो तीन चीज़ करना पड़ेगा कि आइडियली द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट यू शुड डू along with the speaking is, as I said, provide a direction to the group. Now the best way to provide a direction to the group is to look at the topic from both angles. Don't jump to one side. I told you last time also that if normally most group discussion topics have a for and an against. So if you jump on one side of the discussion right at the start, then all the points that are there against that point will get removed. So let's say if you take up a controversial topic like, is the CAA good for India? Is the CAA good for India? Now this is a difficult topic to discuss because there are very strong points on both sides, right? Now if you jump with your emotions that you say yes, or the other way, you jump with your emotion, then you say no in a group discussion. What happens if you take this side? Then you have the points on this in your discussions, during your discussions, right? And the other aspect, one more aspect that wanted to remind you about is that what is a good interruption strategy. A lot of times inside a GD, what happens is that it becomes a fish market. And this is a question a lot of people ask me. What if the GD becomes a fish market? Everybody's shouting loudly and I've got no time to speak or no chance to speak in the GD. So my point of view on that is that ऐसा होता नहीं है. This does not happen very often. लेकिन अगर ऐसा होता है तो इस केस में भी your focus has to be to identify the time phase during the timeline of the GD. You have to identify the opportunities during the timeline to speak. So what happens is when a person is speaking inside the GD, if I talk about the loudness level of the GD and the timeline on this axis, the loudness level of the GD is here and the timeline is here. So as you go through the discussion, this plot can actually be structured under two ways. So finally I have access to the live feed again. So the plot, the loudness plot can actually happen on two structures. One level is if one person is speaking, you are at this decibel level. And then there are times where two people or even three people are speaking. So sometimes the group does go there. And especially in fish market GDs, this happens quite a bit. And then from there you come down again. So there will be times when one individual will be speaking even in a complete fish market. there'll be times when one individual is speaking, when even in a complete fish market. So when this individual is speaking, what happens is, if I break the timeline of his own speech, and you can think about this from your angle also, that when you start speaking, suppose you are in a group discussion and you have started to speak. If I draw another plot, and this plot is when you have started to communicate, 0% communication done, and this is the end where 100% communication is done. You have a point, and on this timeline now, I am putting up what percentage of the communication that you want to make has gone through. So there's a point you're trying to make. You're trying to say that let's say the CA is discriminatory against one particular religion, and it is not something that is acceptable according to the guiding principles of our constitution, which is the book we all have pledged ourselves to, and a country which has pledged itself to that. So you're making that point. So what happens is, if I plot this percentage of your point communicated against your personal resistance to allowing somebody else to speak, your personal resistance to allowing somebody else to speak. If I plot this on this axis and this on that axis, so as you start speaking, initially your resistance to allowing somebody else to speak will be very high. And as you keep speaking, this resistance will start tapering off and will start coming down. And you'll come to a point where your resistance will actually be very low for somebody else to pick up. तो क्या होगा, अगर तुमको यहाँ पे कोई इंटरप्रेट करता है, तो you will fight like with tooth and nail. You'll fight like cats and dogs amongst yourself. You not allow him or her to interrupt. But somewhere around this point where the resistance goes down drastically, after this, if somebody is interrupting you, you will gladly give up the mantle of speaking. So if you are struggling to interrupt in a group discussion, you need to start observing for these cues. You need to start focusing on the people who are speaking, who are getting time. And typically in a fish market GD, even in a fish market GD, there will be 3-4 people who will be speaking more alone more often than others. So you look at those people, you try to identify how they come in, and you try to identify the point of time where their resistance drops. And that perception, if you get, and you become the first person to interrupt them, you will get the single chance. और तब जब तुम interrupt यहाँ पे करोगे, तो क्या होगा कि then again your timeline starts and other people will have to wait. अगर तुम इस point को delay कर देते हो, तो क्या होता है, by this time everybody knows that I have to come in. So यहाँ तक अगर allow कर दो इसको continue करने के लिए, तो 4 लोग यहाँ पे suddenly आ जाएंगे, and then the resistance to speaking will be very high again, and you will not be able to enter again. So the key is to identify this particular time frame in the speech of a person. So interruption points might happen just before this happens. Maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds before that. 10-15 सेकंड का टाइम फ्रेम रहता है. अगर कोई 40 सेकंड बोल रहा है, तो पहले 15-20 सेकंड जनरल है ये. This is just general numbers that I'm crunching out. First 20 seconds, that person will not allow you to speak, because if you interfere, especially if he's one of the 3-4 leaders, he'll not allow you to interfere. But after the 20th second, 25th second, 30th second, अगर 40 second का timeline है, तो by the 30th second his resistance will drop. He's made his point, right? And at this point, if you become the first one to spot that and interfere, you'll get your chance. So that's what good interruption skills mean. The other way to interrupt is directly. I mean, you should have, if you are not part of the leadership group in the first 3 to 5 minutes, you should have identified who the leadership group is, and then take a direct punt at that person, at the number one leader. Take a direct one-to-one on the leader, because if the leader starts listening, his followers will start listening. That's the other way to interrupt. So you can interrupt with a positive entry with against the leader. I agree with what you are saying, but I would like to add something. Right? What you are saying makes a lot of sense, but I would want to add my own point to this. Right? So if you draw the attention of the leader and intervene with these kind of interventions, he's going to support you to speak. Because अगर वो तुमको support नहीं करेगा, अगर तुम बोल रहे हो, I agree with what you have said, but I would like to add my own point. If you're making a statement like that and the leader does not support you, so he is losing listening points. So he will have to support you. He will definitely support you. But the other way in which you can also do a negative intervention, and this is more desperate times. 7-8 मिनट हो गए, तुम बोले नहीं हो, you have to come in. ऐसे अलाउ नहीं करना चाहिए उस पॉइंट को आने के लिए. तो नेगेटिव इंटरवेंशन इज डायरेक्टली टेकिंग ऑन द लीडर. ये 1-to-1 पॉजिटिव था लीडर के साथ. यहाँ पे तुम लीडर को सपोर्ट कर रहे हो. The negative intervention against the leader could be, I do not agree with you. I don't think you're making a valid point. Now, अगर लीडर को ये सीधा डायरेक्टली तुम बोल दिया, I'll come to your question, Naveen. अगर सीधा, I don't think you are making a valid point. अगर ये तुम लीडर को सीधा बोल दिए, straight, one-on-one, something like this. Obviously, it's a strategy fraught with risk. Because अगर तुमने इसको बैकअप नहीं किया with a strong point, तो तुम फिर पूरे जीडी में बाहर हो जाओगे. Nobody is going to listen to you next time. But as I said, this will have to be used with caution. But अगर use करते हो तो ये sure shot way है to get you to give you a chance to speak. So you have to make sure that you have a point. You have a very strong point at this point. So even at the 7-8 minute period in a discussion, if you make an entry like this, you can still enter the leadership group of the discussion. Right? So these are some intervention strategies that you should adopt, especially if you are having problems in speaking during the discussion. Now, Naveen is asking me how to crack interview for FMS. So I'm assuming that you have a call from FMS, Naveen. So congratulations on that. And FMS जो है, या फिर in fact any top B school, जब तुमको देखेगा तो वो तुम्हारे अंदर essentially their job is to identify your potential, right? Below 60 throughout, Kunal says below 60 throughout academics, 10th and 12th and graduation crack IIM. IIM अब 19-20 IIM हो गए, तो you can definitely crack IIM. Maybe ABC might not take you with those academics simply because of the fact that they have a choice of people who have done better, so why will they take a risk? But yes, you can definitely crack IIMs. You need to get a high percentile first of all, and then look at what institutes call you. You will get enough good calls from good institutes. So anyway, coming back, any top B school essentially looks at it's supposed to look at 2-3 things. First, it is going to offer you one of the 300, 400, 500 seats it has. And for any top institution, every student is a potential future leader. So when they give you that seat, they have to make sure that they are giving it to the guy who's got the maximum potential for that seat, for that particular seat, and you're going to justify that potential. So that's one thing you need to, this is the basic framework in which an interview is taken. The second thing they look at is, again, what are the chances, or are they willing to take a risk on you you will be able to convert this potential into performance going forward in the next 20 years. Because if you're looking at an FMS or an IIM Ahmedabad, when you go out and hit the streets and hit the market and start working, when you start your work, when you start your work life, everywhere you go, your institute, whether it's FMS or IIM Ahmedabad or whatever college you're going for, that institute is going to be known by you. So if I ask you to think about it this way, कि तुम अपने सोशल सर्कल में कितने एफएमएस ग्रेजुएट्स को जानते हो? Look at your family social circle, your family and professional social circle. How many normal people like you, me, how many FMS graduates, how many IIM Ahmedabad graduates do you come across in your circles? So typically, what an individual like you, me, any individual in Indian society might or might not also might come across a maximum of 1, 2, 3 IIM or FMS graduates or IIM ABC or FMS graduates in his life. So what an IIM Ahmedabad is, you will be making out, or what an FMS is, you will be forming your opinion based on that person. So when a B school decides to take you in and gives you that seat, it is giving you the responsibility of representing, becoming the ambassador of that B school for the next 25 years. So in my life, wherever I've gone, a lot of people I've met, for them, I have represented what IIM Bangalore is all about. For a lot of people who know me, from them, IIM Bangalore, they try to visualize IIM Bangalore by looking at me in terms of the fact that I am an alumnus from there. So, given this framework or given this background, they have to really take care of who they want to represent them. So definitely एक बी स्कूल तुम्हारा पर्सनालिटी को देखेगा, तुम्हारे दिस थिंग. और एक लाइन में अगर मैं बताऊं, if I have to speak in one line, what a B school looks at essentially, and all these questions are towards that only. What a B school looks at essentially, कि have you transited from being a boy girl, have you transited from being a boy girl to becoming a man woman? And if this transition has happened, they will take you. So are you a 21-year-old boy, or are you a 21-year-old man who's making his own decisions, who's definitive about where he is going, what he's trying to do? A boy is doing it because other people are telling him to do it. Yes, Kunal, there are a lot of companies in the top B schools which don't have a 60% criteria. You don't need to worry about placements. The only thing you need to worry about is how do you get there. So there will be companies who will have a academic criteria, but there will be a lot of companies which will not. और टॉप बी स्कूल्स के प्लेसमेंट में क्या होता है कि लास्ट में हमेशा 50-100 कंपनीज एम्प्टी हैंडेड जाते हैं. They don't get students. They'll always go back empty handed. So those companies don't really have a choice of whether they are going to look at academics or not look at academics, etc. उनको जो मिलता है वो ले लेते हैं. Right? So if you look at all the standard starting questions in a personal interview, whether it's introduce yourself, tell me something about yourself, or it's why should we select you, why do you want to do an MBA, what alternate career plans do you have, name 3-5 strengths, 3-5 weaknesses. They're all meant to assess you as an individual and assess whether you have moved from being a boy girl who's driven by the world to becoming a man woman who's driving himself. So is your locus of control, first question that an interviewer tries to answer, is the student's locus of control inside or outside? Does he control who he wants to be? Does he control what he does? Or is the locus of control outside are you still controlled by a remote, because and you're controlled by what is happening in the world. So if you can show this movement, I think that movement is enough for an interviewer to select you, because 95% I've taken B school interviews, and I've taken interviews of for my company. I've taken passing out IIM students interviews also at campus, and I saw that 95%, even when I went to an IIM, I'll not name the ABCL kind of names. Even when I went to one of these IIMs to recruit, final selections, I found that I was talking to 95% boys and girls, and only 5% men turned up, men or women turned up. तो ये ट्रांजिशन पे तुमको फोकस करना पड़ेगा कि हुआ है कि नहीं, और ये ट्रांजिशन नहीं भी हुआ है तो उसको इंजीनियर करके तुमको दिखाना पड़ेगा अभी, right? So typically what you should obviously do is 90% questions of your interview will come from your profile. 90% interview questions will come from your profile. So you look at your profile, look at the past, make a list of questions of what is coming out. Look at the present, make a list of questions of what is coming out. Look at your future, make a list of questions about what is coming out, and prepare ideas for these I'll just come to Kunal's question. Prepare ideas for these answers. So introduce yourself, tell me something about yourself. This answer has to be outside the standard answer ki I've done my BSc or my BA or my engineering from this college. It has to be outside your biodata. So tell me something about yourself. May you will talk about what kind of person you are. So this यहाँ पे तुम्हारे character traits आ जाएंगे. You will talk about what kind of life you've had. You will talk about what are your major beliefs. You will talk about any major incidents in your life. So, for example, I was growing up, I was from a bureaucratic family. So, an answer that could suit somebody like me would be about would be talking about that uh, throughout my life, because of my parents' profession, I have been shifting places, and I have had the experience of 6 schools during my class 1 to class 12, and because of this constant shifting, it has shaped who I have become, and I have become a very good adapter to situations. I have become a very good my skills of adaptation, my skills of matching or meeting up new friends, new people, my shyness in new situations, etc. They've all disappeared, because once you have changed 5 6 schools right through your childhood, it's become part of your DNA. So these kind of answers you'll give to these questions. So I'll take one more session on the personal interview, because this is not enough. We'll talk more in details. आज के सेशन में ज़्यादा GD का ही बात किया मैंने. So we'll talk in more details about this in the next session. Kunal's question I'll just answer, and then we'll wind up for today. The what kind of certificate we should have before going to MBA college? The certificates से ज़्यादा important knowledge है. They don't look so much at certificates, but they look at knowledge, what kind of knowledge you've gained. So you have a lot of these online free courses available, which can also be paid for, and you can join them by paying for them also for certificates. But if you just do them free without a certificate, you still have the knowledge. So if you have knowledge, you can talk about it to anyone, right? So try to create that kind of a profile, rather than a profile driven by paper certificates, right? So thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed the broadcast, and I'll see you soon, very soon again. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So I hope I've answered your question, Kunal. And Naveen, your questions are answered here. So I'll wind up then. Thank you so much. Bye bye.